Hello everybody, welcome to Nostalgia Goggles. I'm your host, the Retro Gaming Nerd, also known as Chris, and today is a very special occasion, mainly because I get to talk about one of my favorite Zelda games of all time, Legend of Zelda: Link's Awakening for the Nintendo Switch. Now, I will get to the original game eventually, but we gotta talk about what's more relevant at the time, especially since, let's be honest, this game's a little harder to come across than this one. So, with that being said, let's see if this game is worth it, or if you should just stick to the old one. Before we get started, I do have to mention, just for reasons, that this is not sponsored in any way by Nintendo. But I'm down for that. So the story of A Link's Awakening is the same as the original, but since it's been 26 years ago, since it's been that long, let me break it down for some of you newcomers. You play as Link. Actually, you play as the same Link from A Link to the Past, which is my favorite Zelda game of all time, which I'd actually most recommend you playing after you play this game, because they actually go together. And there's some stuff in this game that is referenced in the other game. Well, vice versa, but you get my point. You can play this on the Nintendo Switch. This whole thing that I'm doing right here actually has almost nothing to do with the review, but I just thought it was cool to say, and it's just nice to know that you actually have another game you can play. Enough with me rambling, I'll get back to the actual review. Anyways, Link goes to travel to other countries to go train for the next great evil that comes, because Ganon is not the only evil to threaten Hyrule. Link gets caught in a storm and he was shipwrecked on the mysterious Koholint Island. And upon awakening, he finds his sword and his shield and is sent out to awaken the slumbering windfish and bring peace to Koholint Island. Or is he? This game is a little more personal than the normal Zelda game because there is no Zelda, there is no Triforce, there is just Link and his adventure, where you get to know the inhabitants of the island and watch all the ominous mysteries unfold. Now don't let this game's cutesy demeanor fool you, there's a lot more going on than meets the eye on Koholint Island. With all that being said, let's get into the gameplay because there are some differences between the old one and the new one that I need to address. So A Link's Awakening easily plays like A Link to the Past, because at one point it was actually a port of A Link to the Past for the Game Boy, but somewhere down the line it became its own game. Despite that irrelevant piece of gaming trivia, this version of Link's Awakening offers a much smoother gameplay experience by simplifying it. I'm going to compare this one to the old game a lot. Instead of having to equip your sword and shield like the original, you have them equipped constantly, which gives you more liberty than the original Link's Awakening, and adds a new form of combat where you have to parry certain enemies. Since your sword and shield do not count as an equipable item, you have 2 free item slots, which are on the X and Y buttons. Now that you have 2 added buttons to the game, you can do what makes this game unique: combine items. And now some items don't count as equipable, like for instance the Power Bracelet and the Pegasus Boots. This means once you find them, they can be used at any time. Enough about the gameplay mechanics itself, let's talk about the dungeons. The dungeons really haven't changed much aside from there being more hints. That doesn't mean the game holds your hand though, you still have to use your brain to solve more of the difficult puzzles. Now this game relies heavily upon trading. Now as a kid it was a lot harder for me to keep track of where stuff goes, but it seems like it kind of comes into play on its own. For instance, you get item A, you give it to person B, and it really doesn't come back into the story until you do a few dungeons. It just kind of comes and goes, but trading is very important, and sometimes it's obvious, sometimes it isn't. I just think that it's a fair warning. And last but not least, there's Dampé's Dungeon Creator. It's kind of like Mario Maker, where you can create your own dungeons after collecting pieces from beating dungeons and using your amiibo, and sometimes when you beat the dungeons that you created, you get pieces from Dampé. So enough about the gameplay itself, let's talk about the presentation, how this game looks and sounds. There's a lot of people who actually don't like the art style of this game, but I don't mind it. Actually, I really enjoy it. The surreal toy-like aesthetic is appropriate for the game, and I can't imagine any other art style that would work for it. In the art book that comes with the game if you bought the Dream Collection, they showed that there was different kind of art styles for the game, and it just didn't look right. With that being said, I don't really want to see that kind of art style return unless they use it for an original Zelda title or a remake of Oracle of Ages and or Seasons, because those games share the same assets as Link's Awakening did, at least the original games did. The music of this game has been updated to actually have real instrumentation within it, which only adds to the overall beauty of the score. With all that being said, let's move on to the goods and the bads. So as far as remakes go, this game stands on its own, even occasionally outclassing the original. And don't take that too lightly, because I love the original version with all my heart, but I have to be real here. One's a Game Boy game, and the other's made for console. I like that the game doesn't dumb down the dungeons. I was really afraid that they were going to in this game. The dungeon creator mode is like Mario Maker. It's fun, but I suck at it. The cameos from other game characters are delightful, and they blend in very well with the rest of the world. And last but not least, the new gameplay mechanics that were added are a welcome improvement. And with all that being said, let's get into the bads. Now, I'm not saying this game is flawless. One of the problems that it does have is actually a frame rate issue. I really don't understand how that specific thing works, but it really doesn't seem like it's one of those games that really needs to have a frame rate issue. But with that being said, all the rest of the things that I could actually think of that would be a flaw with this game is kind of nitpicky to a point of there's no real point of me talking about it. With that being said, I'm going to give this game a free pass on the bads. Anyways, without further ado, let's get to the final thoughts. So I think this is most definitely worth it, especially if you've played the original or if you've never heard of it. This is now the time to play this game. And I'm going to be honest with you, you should take my whole review with a grain of salt due to the fact that I grew up with this game and all. I mean, it is one of my favorite Zelda games of all time after all. But enough about me, let's talk about you. What do you guys think? Do you think this is a worth it remake? Do you think it's better than the original? Or are you guys still playing the Game Boy? I don't judge you either way, because I go back and play the original every now and then. So, with all that being said, I'll see you guys next time on my next review, and I promise it will not be The Legend of Zelda. I promise.